Jake Sullivan had never imagined that his 12th birthday would be spent fighting venomous serpents in the ruins of a diplomatic research station, but the universe seemed to have its own ideas about appropriate coming-of-age experiences for human children on frontier worlds. The attack on the Joint Human Thackeray facility had come without warning, raiders using military-grade weapons to destroy what should have been a peaceful scientific collaboration between species learning to coexist in the Kepler system. Jake's father, Dr. Michael Sullivan, had been part of the xenobiology team studying adaptive organisms, while the Thackeray delegation included Princess Vera Thane, whose expertise in environmental systems had made her invaluable for understanding how different species could share planetary resources. Now Dar. Sullivan was dead, along with most of the research team, and Jake found himself alone in the damaged facility where emergency power failures had opened containment systems that should have kept the station's most dangerous specimens safely isolated. Princess. Jake called softly, making his way through corridors where sparking electrical systems created the only illumination in sections that should have been brightly lit and safely navigated. Princess Vera, are you okay? He found her in what had been the main laboratory, unconscious and bleeding from wounds that looked serious but not immediately fatal. The Thackeray were tougher than humans, their warrior culture had developed from evolutionary pressures that made them naturally resilient, but Princess Vera's injuries would require medical attention that wasn't available in the damaged facility. Princess, Jake said, kneeling beside her and gently checking for signs of consciousness, I'm going to try to help you, okay? Princess Vera's eyes opened slowly, focusing on Jake with the kind of disorientation that suggested serious head trauma. Human child, she said weakly, her voice carrying the musical tones that made Thackeray's speech sound like controlled singing. You should not be here. The facility is compromised. I know, but I couldn't leave you, Jake said, noting that her bioluminescent skin patterns were flickering erratically, a sign that Thackeray physiology was under severe stress. Princess, can you move? We need to get somewhere safer. Safer where? Princess Vera asked, attempting to sit up and immediately grimacing with pain that suggested broken ribs or internal injuries. The raiders destroyed the communication systems and evacuation routes. Maybe one of the emergency shelters, Jake suggested, though privately he wondered whether anywhere in the facility could be considered safe when hostile forces had demonstrated the ability to penetrate all their security systems. Their conversation was interrupted by a sound that made Jake's blood freeze, the distinctive hissing that his father's research team had taught him to associate with tunnel vipers, indigenous predators whose venom could kill an adult human in less than 10 minutes. Oh no, Jake whispered, recognizing the slithering sounds that indicated multiple serpents moving through the damaged facility. Princess, the containment breach must have released the viper specimens. Princess Vera's bioluminescent patterns shifted to colors that Jake's cultural briefings had identified as indicating alarm and defensive positioning. Human child, tunnel vipers hunt in coordinated packs. If the specimens have been released, this facility is no longer habitable for anyone without full protective gear. Jake looked around the laboratory, noting that the weapons lockers had been destroyed during the raid and the only available tools were research equipment that hadn't been designed for defending against indigenous predators. He found a plasma cutter that could serve as a makeshift weapon, though using it effectively would require getting close enough to the vipers to risk being bitten. Jake, Princess Vera said, using his name for the first time since they'd met, you must leave me and seek safety for yourself. I cannot move quickly enough to escape if the vipers find us. I'm not leaving you, Jake said with the stubborn determination that had gotten him in trouble throughout his short life. Princess, my dad always said that you don't abandon people who need help. Your father was a wise man, but wisdom also includes recognizing when situations require difficult choices, Princess Vera said, her bioluminescent patterns showing the deep blues that indicated profound sadness. Jake, I will not be responsible for a human child dying to protect someone who is already beyond saving. You're not beyond saving, Jake insisted, activating the plasma cutter and positioning himself between Princess Vera and the corridor where the hissing sounds were growing louder. And I'm not leaving. The first tunnel viper that slithered into the laboratory was approximately 3 feet long, with fangs that dripped venom and movement patterns that suggested intelligence as well as predatory instinct. Jake had studied these creatures through his father's research but had never imagined facing them without protective equipment or backup support. "Jake, move slowly away from me," Princess Vera whispered. "Tunnel vipers are attracted to bioelectric signatures, and my thrakkery physiology produces stronger readings than human nervous systems." "Then they'll come for you first," Jake said, raising the plasma cutter as the viper's attention focused on the wounded princess behind him. "Which means I need to stop them here." The viper struck with speed that Jake's 12-year-old reflexes couldn't match, but his desperate swing with the plasma cutter managed to sever the creature's head even as its fangs sank into his left arm. Pain exploded through his nervous system as alien venom began shutting down his motor functions, but more vipers were entering the laboratory and Princess Vera was still defenseless behind him. "Jake!" Princess Vera cried as he stumbled but maintained his position between her and the remaining serpents. "I'm okay," Jake lied, swinging the plasma cutter at the second viper despite the fact that his left arm was already going numb and his vision was starting to blur. "Princess, just stay down." The second viper's bite caught him on the leg, adding more venom to a system that was already struggling to process toxins designed to paralyze creatures much larger than a human child. Jake's weapon slipped from nerveless fingers as the third viper approached, but he grabbed a metal chair and used it to keep the creature away from Princess Vera even as his body began failing. "Human child," Princess Vera said, her voice carrying emotions that Jake couldn't interpret through the growing haze of neurotoxic poisoning, "you should not die for someone you barely know." "I know you're a good person," Jake managed, using his last reserves of strength to position the chair between the vipers and the princess. "And good people deserve protection." The fourth and fifth vipers struck simultaneously, their venom finally overwhelming Jake's failing nervous system. He collapsed beside Princess Vera, his small body convulsing as alien toxins shut down his vital functions, but his unconscious hand still gripped the improvised weapon he'd used to kill 3 creatures that could have easily overwhelmed a trained adult. "Jake," Princess Vera whispered, her own injuries preventing her from providing the medical assistance that might have helped counteract the venom. "You fought like a true thrakkery warrior. Your father would be proud." When Chief Commander Korath arrived with the Thrakkery Rescue Force 20 minutes later, he found Princess Vera cradling the unconscious human child who had risked everything to protect her from creatures that his species had never evolved to survive. "Father," Princess Vera said as Korath knelt beside them, "this human boy saved my life. He fought tunnel vipers with improvised weapons while dying from their venom, and he never retreated even when I begged him to save himself." Korath studied the scene. Dead vipers scattered around the laboratory, evidence of desperate combat, and a human child whose small body showed multiple bite marks that should have killed him before he could complete his heroic defense. "Daughter, how long ago was he bitten?" 25 minutes, perhaps longer," Princess Vera replied. "Father, he should be dead already, but he continued fighting for nearly 10 minutes after the first bite." Korath looked at Jake's pale face, noting the determination that remained visible even in unconsciousness, and realized he was witnessing something unprecedented in Thrakkery cultural experience, an alien child who had demonstrated the kind of warrior courage that their society considered the highest form of honor. "Medic," he called to his team, "begin emergency treatment for tunnel viper poisoning. Use the experimental counteragents if necessary." "Commander, those treatments have never been tested on human physiology," the medic warned. "This human child has earned the right to survival through courage that exceeds most Thrakkery warriors," Korath replied with the authority of someone whose decisions carried the weight of cultural tradition. "We will not let him die for lack of trying every available option." As the Thrakkery medical team began experimental treatment that might save Jake's life or kill him more quickly than the venom, Korath realized that the boy's heroism had created a situation that would require unprecedented decisions about honor, recognition, and the meaning of courage that transcended species boundaries. The Thrakkery Medical Bay aboard Chief Commander Korath's flagship provided the most advanced life support systems available in this sector of the galaxy, but treating tunnel viper poisoning in a human child required improvisation that pushed the boundaries of xenobiology into uncharted territory. "Commander," reported Medical Officer Thane, "the human's physiology is responding to our counteragents, but the interaction effects are unpredictable." His nervous system is adapting to our treatments in ways that suggest remarkable resilience. Korath studied the bio-readouts that showed Jake's vital signs stabilizing despite having survived venom concentrations that would have killed most adult Thrakri warriors within minutes. What are his chances for complete recovery? If he survives the next 6 hours, the prognosis is excellent, Thane replied. Commander, this human child's determination to continue fighting while poisoned may have saved his life by forcing his circulatory system to process the venom more rapidly than normal. Meaning his courage enhanced his survival chances. Meaning his refusal to surrender allowed his body to adapt to toxins that would have killed someone who collapsed immediately upon being bitten, Thane explained. Commander, this human demonstrated warrior physiology as well as warrior mentality. Princess Vera, recovering in the adjacent medical bed from her own injuries, had insisted on remaining close enough to monitor Jake's treatment despite her father's concerns about her condition. Father, she said, Jake continued fighting for nearly 10 minutes after multiple bites that should have incapacitated him immediately. He killed 3 tunnel vipers while dying from their venom, and he never stopped protecting me even when I begged him to save himself. Daughter, you have described behavior that meets every criterion for recognition as a Thrakri hero warrior, Korath observed, studying the unconscious human child whose small size made his heroism seem even more remarkable. But our traditions have no framework for honoring alien heroes. Then perhaps our traditions require updating, Princess Vera said with the quiet determination that had made her one of the most respected voices in Thrakri politics despite her youth. Father, courage transcends species boundaries. Korath reviewed the cultural precedents that governed Thrakri recognition of exceptional bravery, noting that their warrior society had developed elaborate ceremonies for honoring those who risked their lives protecting royal family members from mortal danger. The Code of Honor requires appropriate recognition for warriors who demonstrate exceptional courage in defense of royal blood, he said slowly. But Jake Sullivan is neither Thrakri nor adult, which places him outside the normal categories for such recognition. The code also states that true courage deserves honor regardless of the warrior's origins, Princess Vera reminded him. Father, Jake demonstrated courage that exceeded most trained Thrakri soldiers. His age and species don't diminish the value of what he accomplished. But they do complicate the question of appropriate recognition, Korath replied. Vera, what reward could we offer a human child that would adequately honor his sacrifice without creating diplomatic complications with his own species? We could ask him what he wants, Princess Vera suggested with the practical wisdom that characterized her approach to complex political problems. Father, Jake might have insights into what would be meaningful recognition rather than imposing our assumptions about appropriate rewards. Their conversation was interrupted by signs that Jake was regaining consciousness, his vital signs showing the stable patterns that indicated successful treatment and neurological recovery. Princess. Jake whispered, his voice weak but alert as he struggled to focus on his surroundings. Are you okay? Did the vipers? The vipers are dead, Jake, Princess Vera said gently, moving to sit beside his medical bed despite her own injuries. You killed them all while protecting me. You saved my life. Oh good, Jake said with relief that seemed entirely focused on her welfare rather than his own survival. I was worried that I hadn't been strong enough to stop them. Korath studied the human child whose first concern upon awakening was the safety of the person he protected, recognizing the selfless mentality that Thrakri culture considered the essence of true warrior spirit. Jake Sullivan, he said formally, I am Chief Commander Korath, Princess Vera's father and leader of the Thrakri expedition force. You have demonstrated courage that honors both your species and our own. Thank you, sir, Jake said, attempting to sit up despite obvious weakness from his ordeal. Is everyone else from the research station okay? I regret that the casualties were extensive, Korath said gently. Jake, your father and most of the research team were killed during the initial attack. You and Princess Vera are among the few survivors. Jake's expression showed the kind of grief that children experienced when processing loss too large for their emotional frameworks, but he nodded with the stoic acceptance that suggested maturity beyond his years. Dad always said that when bad things happen, you focus on helping whoever you can, Jake said quietly. I guess that's what I tried to do. You succeeded in helping someone very important to our people, Korath said, recognizing that Jake's philosophy reflected the warrior values that Thackeray society honored above all other qualities. Jake, your courage in protecting Princess Vera has earned recognition that our culture reserves for the greatest heroes. I don't need recognition, Jake said with sincerity that impressed both Thackeray observers. I just want to make sure Princess Vera is safe and that the raiders don't hurt anyone else. The raiders have been eliminated, Korath assured him. But Jake, Thackeray honor requires that exceptional courage receive appropriate acknowledgement. You risked your life to protect royal blood, which creates obligations that our culture cannot ignore. What kind of obligations? Jake asked, though his tone suggested curiosity rather than concern about potential complications. The kind that require us to ensure your welfare and provide opportunities for you to develop the warrior potential that you demonstrated during the Viper attack, Princess Vera explained. Jake, our culture believes that true courage should be nurtured and supported rather than simply acknowledged and forgotten. You want to help me become a better warrior? We want to help you become whatever kind of person you choose to be, with the understanding that your natural courage and protective instincts make you someone worth investing in, Korath said. Jake, would you be interested in learning Thackeray warrior techniques and philosophy while maintaining your human identity and connections? Jake considered the offer while studying Princess Vera's expression, which suggested that his answer mattered to her personally as well as politically. Would that help me protect people better? He asked. It would provide you with skills and knowledge that could serve both your protective instincts and your intellectual development, Korath confirmed. Jake, we're offering you training that could prepare you for responsibilities that serve both our people's interests. And I could still be human. I wouldn't have to choose between my species and your culture. You would become something new, a bridge between our peoples who understands both human and Thackeray approaches to courage, honor, and service, Princess Vera said. Jake, you could help our species learn to work together more effectively. Jake looked around the medical bay where advanced alien technology had saved his life, then at the princess whose life he'd saved through simple determination to do the right thing regardless of personal cost. Okay, he said with the straightforward acceptance that had characterized his approach to every challenge he'd faced. If it helps people and keeps Princess Vera safe, I'll learn whatever you want to teach me. Excellent, Korath said, realizing that Jake's response confirmed his assessment of the boy's character and potential. Jake Sullivan, you are about to become the first human to receive full Thackeray warrior training. I believe you will honor that privilege through service that benefits both our species. I'll do my best, Jake promised, not understanding that his simple commitment to doing his best would reshape the relationship between humans and Thackeray for generations to come. 6 months after the Tunnel Viper incident, Jake found himself in the Thackeray capital city of Velvar, learning combat techniques in training facilities that had been designed for warriors whose physiology and cultural background differed significantly from his own human heritage. Jake, called Instructor Kane, your defensive positioning is improving, but you're still thinking like a human rather than adapting to Thackeray combat philosophy. What's the difference? Jake asked, pausing in his practice routine to wipe sweat from his forehead while Princess Vera observed his training with the analytical attention she brought to all technical subjects. Human combat training emphasizes individual achievement and personal survival, Kane explained, moving through demonstration techniques with the fluid grace that characterized Thackeray martial arts. Thackeray combat philosophy prioritizes group protection and mission completion even when individual survival is uncertain. You mean like when I fought the Vipers? Jake asked, recognizing the connection between his instinctive behavior during the crisis and the formal training he was receiving. Exactly like when you fought the Vipers, Princess Vera said with approval. Jake, you demonstrated natural Thackeray warrior mentality before you'd received any training in our techniques. The formal instruction is simply helping you understand and develop instincts you already possess. Jake practiced the defensive forms that Instructor Kane had shown him, noting how Thackeray techniques emphasized protecting others rather than achieving personal dominance over opponents. The approach felt natural despite being completely different from the human martial arts he'd studied before coming to Velvar. Princess Vera, he said during a break in training, how do other Thrakari feel about a human learning warrior techniques that are usually reserved for your own people? They feel that exceptional courage deserves exceptional recognition regardless of species origin, Princess Vera replied, though her tone suggested the reality was more complex than her diplomatic answer indicated. But some of them have concerns, Jake observed, having learned to read the subtle expressions that Princess Vera used when discussing sensitive political topics. Some traditionalists question whether alien warriors can truly understand Thrakari honor concepts, she admitted. But your behavior during the Viper incident demonstrated honor that exceeded most Thrakari warriors, so their concerns focus on theory rather than practical evidence. What kind of theoretical concerns? Concerns about whether training alien warriors creates security risks or dilutes traditional Thrakari values, Princess Vera explained. Jake, change always creates anxiety among people who prefer familiar patterns to innovative approaches. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of War Chief Voss, one of the traditionalist leaders who had opposed Chief Commander Karatha's decision to provide Jake with full warrior training. Princess Vera, Voss said with the formal courtesy that barely concealed political disagreement, I request permission to evaluate the human's progress according to standard warrior assessment protocols. Of course, War Chief, Princess Vera replied diplomatically. Jake, War Chief Voss would like to observe your training. Jake recognized the tension in Princess Vera's voice that indicated this evaluation carried significance beyond routine progress monitoring, but he approached the situation with the straightforward honesty that had characterized his adaptation to Thrakari culture. War Chief Voss, he said respectfully, what would you like to see? I would like to see whether a human child can demonstrate the kind of warrior discipline that justifies the unprecedented training you have received, Voss said, activating combat simulation equipment that would test Jake's skills under conditions that approximated real combat situations. The simulation involved protecting multiple civilian targets from coordinated attacks by opponents whose capabilities exceeded what any single warrior could reasonably be expected to handle alone. Jake recognized that the scenario was designed to test whether he would prioritize his own survival or maintain protective positioning even when victory was impossible. Begin simulation, Voss announced, and Jake immediately moved to establish defensive positions that would protect the maximum number of civilians despite leaving himself exposed to enemy fire. For 20 minutes, Jake fought against overwhelming odds while maintaining protective formations that prevented simulated attacks from reaching the civilian targets behind him. His techniques combined human adaptability with Thrakari protective philosophy, creating approaches that were unconventional but remarkably effective. Simulation complete, Voss announced, studying results that showed Jake had successfully protected all civilian targets despite taking simulated damage that would have incapacitated most warriors. How did I do? Jake asked, noting that War Chief Voss was examining the tactical analysis with expressions that suggested surprise rather than disappointment. You demonstrated combat effectiveness that exceeds 70% of trained Thrakari warriors, Voss said slowly. More importantly, you maintained protective positioning even when tactical analysis indicated that retreat would have ensured your survival. Retreat would have meant abandoning the people I was supposed to protect, Jake said with the matter-of-fact tone he used when stating obvious facts. War Chief, that wasn't really an option. Voss studied Jake with the reassessment that occurred when theoretical concerns encountered practical evidence that contradicted expectations. Human child, your approach to warrior responsibility aligns perfectly with traditional Thrakari values, he said finally. You prioritize mission completion and civilian protection over personal survival considerations. Isn't that what warriors are supposed to do? Jake asked, genuinely confused by the suggestion that protective duty might be controversial. It is exactly what warriors are supposed to do, Princess Vera said with satisfaction. Jake, you've just demonstrated that human nature and Thrakari warrior philosophy are completely compatible when properly understood. War Chief Voss, she continued, do you still have concerns about the wisdom of training human warriors? I have concerns about the scarcity of warriors, human or Thrakari, who demonstrate such natural understanding of protective responsibility, Voss replied with grudging respect. Princess, this human child possesses warrior instincts that many of our own people struggle to develop through years of training. Then you support continued training? Princess Vera asked. I support expansion of the training program to include other humans who demonstrate similar potential, Voss said, making a political concession that would have significant implications for future human-Thrakkery cooperation. Princess, if other humans possess even a fraction of this child's natural warrior mentality, they could serve our mutual defense interests more effectively than traditional recruitment approaches. Jake listened to the political discussion with growing understanding that his training represented more than personal recognition. It was a demonstration project that could affect how humans and Thrakkery work together for mutual protection and shared goals. Princess Vera, he said quietly, am I being trained to become a bridge between our species? You're being trained to become whatever kind of warrior serves both your personal development and our people's mutual interests, she replied. Jake, your natural protective instincts combined with formal training could help establish cooperation frameworks that benefit everyone. And personally, what does this mean for our friendship? It means that our friendship has become the foundation for political cooperation that serves both species while allowing us to work together on projects that we both find meaningful and important, Princess Vera said, her bioluminescent patterns showing the warm golds that indicated deep affection and satisfaction. Jake realized that his simple decision to protect Princess Vera from tunnel vipers had evolved into an opportunity to build relationships and develop capabilities that could serve both his personal growth and broader humanitarian goals. In that case, he said with the determination that had characterized his approach to every challenge since the Viper incident, I want to learn everything I can about being the best possible bridge between humans and Thrakkery. Then that's exactly what we'll teach you, Princess Vera said with confidence that Jake's character and potential made him worthy of the unprecedented opportunities that his courage had earned. 10 years after the Tunnel Viper incident, Jake stood in the ceremonial hall of the Thrakkery capital as Chief Commander Koroth prepared to make an announcement that would formalize his unprecedented role in interspecies diplomacy and mutual defense. Citizens of the Thrakkery Empire and representatives of the Human Colonial Alliance, Koroth announced to the assembled dignitaries, today we recognize the completion of training that has created the first honor-bonded guardian in our civilization's history. Jake, now 22 and possessing the kind of physical and mental capabilities that combined human adaptability with Thrakkery warrior philosophy, stood beside Princess Vera as her father explained the new position that had been created specifically to acknowledge his unique status and potential contributions. Jake Sullivan has demonstrated that courage, honor, and protective duty transcend species boundaries, Koroth continued. His role as honor-bonded guardian establishes him as permanent liaison between our peoples while providing him with authority to speak for Thrakkery interests in human space and human interests in Thrakkery territory. Ambassador Chen of the Human Colonial Alliance stepped forward to address the assembled crowd, her expression showing the diplomatic satisfaction that came from successful negotiations that served multiple objectives simultaneously. The Human Colonial Alliance formally recognizes Jake Sullivan's status as honor-bonded guardian and his authority to represent human interests in interspecies security and cooperation initiatives, she announced. Jake's unique background and training make him invaluable for the kind of collaborative defense programs that serve both our civilization's mutual protection needs. Jake accepted the ceremonial weapons and insignia that marked his new status, recognizing that the formal recognition represented validation of a path that had begun with his simple decision to protect someone who needed help regardless of personal risk. Thank you for this honor, he said, addressing both species representatives, but I want everyone to understand that my goal remains the same as it was when I was 12 years old, protecting people who need protection and helping our species work together for mutual benefit. Jake, Princess Vera said, stepping forward to present him with the final element of his ceremonial recognition, your training is complete, but your service is just beginning. As honor-bonded guardian, you'll help establish defense protocols that serve both our peoples while maintaining the values that made your original heroism possible. The ceremony concluded with the signing of formal agreements that established frameworks for human Thrakkery military cooperation, joint training programs, and diplomatic protocols that had been developed through Jake's 10 years of bridging cultural gaps that had previously seemed unbridgeable. Jake, said General Harrison of the Human Colonial Defense Force, your first assignment as honor-bonded guardian involves establishing joint training facilities where human and Thrakkery personnel can learn collaborative defense techniques. And your second assignment, added War Chief Voss, whose initial skepticism about human warriors had evolved into enthusiastic support for expanded cooperation programs, involves developing recruitment protocols that identify other humans with warrior potential similar to your own. Jake studied the mission parameters that would define his work for the foreseeable future, noting that his responsibilities involved both military coordination and cultural bridge building that served humanitarian as well as strategic objectives. "Princess Vera," he said privately after the ceremony, "are you comfortable with the idea that our friendship has become the foundation for this much political cooperation?" "I'm comfortable with the idea that our friendship demonstrates the kind of trust and mutual respect that makes meaningful cooperation possible," she replied, her bioluminescent patterns showing the warm satisfaction that had characterized their relationship since childhood. "Jake, what we've built together proves that individual relationships can serve broader goals without losing their personal meaning. And personally, how do you feel about me having formal authority to represent Thackeray interests?" "I feel confident that someone who saved my life when he was 12 years old and has spent 10 years learning to understand our culture will represent our interests with the same integrity he's shown in everything else," Princess Vera said, moving closer with the easy familiarity that years of partnership had made natural. "Though I should mention that honor-bonded guardian status includes certain personal privileges as well as political responsibilities," she added, her tone carrying implications that made Jake look at her with new attention. "What kind of personal privileges?" "The kind that acknowledge that someone who has devoted their life to protecting and serving our people deserves consideration for the most meaningful relationships our culture can offer," Princess Vera said, her amber eyes holding his with intensity that transformed their conversation from political discussion into something considerably more personal. Jake realized that Princess Vera was suggesting that his formal recognition included the possibility of relationships that went beyond friendship and professional collaboration into the realm of romantic partnership that would serve both their personal happiness and their species' diplomatic cooperation. "Vera," he said, using her name without title for the first time since childhood, "are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm saying that the boy who saved my life has become a man whose character and capabilities make him someone I want to share my life with," she replied with the directness that had always characterized her approach to important decisions. "Jake, our partnership has been the most meaningful relationship of my life, and I'd like to explore whether it could become something even more significant. Even though I'm human and you're Thackeray royalty." "Especially because you're human and I'm Thackeray royalty," Vera said with a smile that made her bioluminescent patterns shift to the brilliant golds that indicated joy and anticipation. "Jake, our relationship proves that the most important compatibility comes from shared values rather than biological similarity." Jake looked around the ceremonial hall where representatives of two species were celebrating cooperation that had begun with his childhood heroism and evolved into frameworks for mutual protection and shared prosperity. "Vera, I can't think of anything I want more than to build a life with you," he said, recognizing that their relationship had become both the foundation for interspecies cooperation and the model for the kind of partnership that served both personal happiness and broader humanitarian goals. "Then that's exactly what we'll do," Vera replied, her hand finding his with the natural ease that had characterized their connection since the day he'd first protected her from danger. 5 years later, Jake stood on the observation deck of the joint Human-Thackeray defense station that bore his name, watching as graduates from the honor-bonded Guardian training program prepared for assignments that would extend cooperative defense protocols throughout the colony regions. "Any regrets about accepting Chief Commander Karatha's reward for saving my life?" Vera asked, joining him at the viewport where they could observe their shared accomplishments. "None," Jake said, recognizing that his simple act of childhood courage had led to a life of meaningful service and personal fulfillment that exceeded anything he could have imagined. "Though I still can't believe that fighting a few tunnel vipers led to all this." "It led to all this because you demonstrated that true courage creates opportunities for everyone when it's applied with wisdom and dedication to serving others," Vera said, her bioluminescent patterns showing the deep satisfaction that came from work that served both personal values and community welfare. "And our marriage? Any regrets about the political complications of interspecies royal romance?" "Our marriage proves that the strongest political alliances are built on genuine personal relationships," Vera replied, her hand resting on her abdomen where their first child grew, a biological impossibility that advanced medical science had made achievable. Jake, we've created something that serves both our individual happiness and our species' mutual prosperity. In the quiet moments between official duties and public ceremonies, Jake reflected that Chief Commander Karatha's reward for his childhood heroism had transformed not just his own life but the relationship between two civilizations whose cooperation now served as a model for peaceful interspecies development throughout the galaxy. The boy who had refused to abandon a wounded alien princess had become a man whose life proved that courage combined with wisdom could create opportunities that served both individual fulfillment and the broader goal of building a universe where different species could work together for mutual protection and shared prosperity.